Right, so a lot to unpack. I'm not gonna promise too much of a short video this time. I mean, I know the length of the videos is a subject of debate among some of you guys. Some people think it's too long, some people think it's okay. So it is what it is. Watch it in two pieces, or if it's too long for you, don't watch it. I don't know. It is what it is. I have to say what I have to say. First and foremost, yes, Mr. Science. I mean, I'm a big fan of Ferrari. I like Ferrari. It is probably why I'm so frustrated when they do the foolishness that they do over the years, because I like them. I think it's a great team with great history. I love their cars, and I think they often make very fast Formula One cars, which then get just don't necessarily reflect results based on bad strategy calls and so on, and other internal foolishness. But this time came good. Signs knocked it out of the park. Just absolutely brilliant. Congratulations to him. Yes, obviously what happened at Verstappen, benefited them. But the fact is, they were in the right place at the right time, and Sainz capitalized on it. And let's not forget, they were very fast in qualifying, very fast in terms of race pace. Their long distance runs were on par almost with Red Bull. So in practice, so the fact is they weren't gonna be far off. I don't think Max was gonna, even if he had won, which probably would have, he wouldn't have walked away with this one. I don't think. So definitely great drive from Sainz. Big step with Ferrari. Leclerc must be smiling, even though he must also be kind of like, whoa, Sainz is wiping the floor with me. I maybe not too unhappy that Sainz is gonna go at the end of the year. Who knows? But Ferrari has made a big step. They've clearly firmly grasped the second fastest team in F1 right now. I don't think there are any other teams that are gonna really step up. Mark you, I will say that bringing us to second place, well, not second place, second place. By the way, in this format, what I'm gonna try to do is run through the team finishing order, not necessarily the individual race finishing order. So I'm gonna classify the Ferrari 1, 2 as just the Ferrari, finish. Congratulations to Leclerc 2 for a solid drive, but just couldn't match Sainz. So the second team to finish, which is in third place and fourth, is McLaren. Strong finish as well compared to how they started last year. This is like light years ahead. I did comment the last time that I thought, based on how they finished last year, I had expected them to be a little stronger. But I see them making good steps. So I can't really complain. And it is still early. I mean, it's going to be a long season. 24 races is a long season. So I still think there's headroom to grow for them. But clearly they're strong. I think the decision to swap places was the right one. A little, obviously, because it's in Australia, it's unpopular, but it was the right one. I think Norris was faster. And the fact that Piastri didn't even think about complaining suggests he recognized that as well. I think it was the right move, and it justified it with a third and fourth. So that was definitely a good move. So congratulations to McLaren. Good step. Another team that I like. I mean, my favorite driver ever in history is Senna, and obviously McLaren played a big role with him. So McLaren will always kind of have a special place for me. Good for them. Red Bull with Perez. Now, we can say some. This probably would be another video, to be fair, because we really can't get too into the details, because then it would really become too long and tedious. So I probably gonna have to do a video on the individual drivers and some of the things that are happening behind the scenes as well. But let's just say that Perez needs to step up. I've been saying this, and you get the feeling that even the team is now starting to make a few excuses for him. I've heard both Marco and Horner after the race making sounds like, oh, maybe had some damage to the floor or something was stuck in the floor that was impeding the airflow and that the setup wasn't optimal and all of that. I don't buy that. Yes, it may not have been optimal, but Perez should have done better. I'm sorry, he should have done better. I'm just not seeing it. I don't know. I just not seeing it. I think I think somebody else would do better in that car. I think well, imagine putting signs in that car and then you think about that. So I don't know. I don't see Perez. I hear that. I think I heard something about him signing a contract extension. I'd be surprised, and I wouldn't say disappointed, but surprised that Red Bull would do that at this early stage because I think Perez has a lot to prove, and I think they could get a lot more out of another driver. The fact of the matter is, if things like this happen with Verstappen, you have to have your second driver able to step up and carry the team, earn you the points. It's all about the points. Here's Ferrari with a 1-2, McLaren with a 3-4. Why are you down in fifth with what is supposed to be the fastest car? It can't rationalize that. Aston Martin. So I'm not gonna look at the penalty initially because I'm classifying them as they finished. I understand that with the penalty that would have pushed Alonso down. So I'm gonna still classify him as a finish in sixth. Now, in my opinion, the penalty was undeserved. I know that some people will see that differently, but when I look at what Magnussen did in Saudi Arabia a couple of weeks ago, when you look at even with Alonso and Perez in Brazil last year, how Alonso, regulated the pace at the apex to slow down who is behind him so that they can't get on the power early enough and then he accelerates out. That's defensive driving. That's racecraft. That's what we call racecraft. When I was racing in circuit racing, that's what we call racecraft. It's not illegal. And the fact of the matter is that the other people who he was doing it to didn't crash into him because if you're behind, you have to adjust your driving style to what the person's doing in front of you as well. You can't just drive as if you're, alone on the track. It doesn't work that way. And I find that Russell it's like he gets tunnel vision or something. I don't know. But I don't think that penalty was deserved. And I think if you're going to penalize defensive driving, especially early braking or, being slower at the apex or whatever, if you look at what Magnussen did in Saudi Arabia, that was 100 times worse. So there's no consistency whatsoever with that kind of penalty system because that's and not only a penalty, but 20 seconds. That's massive. I mean, that's insane, right? So I really, I hope it's not something stupid like because Johnny Herbert was a steward and he and Alonso have a lot of bad history and, of course, he's English as well. So him and Russell probably have a thing. I don't know. I hope it's not something stupid like that because that penalty, in my opinion, was madness. I can't rationalize that. Stroll did a good job, solid. He's this guy he's just always up and down. 1 minute is a love-hate relationship I have with him, I think. Because 1 minute I'm willing to give him a chance because he'll show some promise. And then the next minute he just does something utterly stupid and he just want to get rid of him. I guess having a rich father will always will always make it be polarizing, I suppose. Now we bring it to one of my youth, Yuki. I like Yuki. I've never hidden that, and I tell you what, he did pretty good. Continuing to show up, Ricardo. Put in a solid qualifying, put in a solid race, doing what he needs to do. I don't think the car is anywhere, where it should be. But he's solid. In fact, the team itself looks good. Franz Tost, is gone, and now a new management now. I like what I see. I like what I see. I think they're heading in a good direction, and I'm actually optimistic about where they're going. They have naturally they'll have their ups and downs, but overall, I like what I see, and I think Yuki is making some good strides. Ricardo, boy, I don't want to jump on the bandwagon about overhype. There's this thing, recency bias, where because he's not doing well. But then when you really look at not so recent with McLaren, and then, yeah, he had a pretty decent 2020 with Renault, but the truth is, that was maybe not necessarily that representative either. Because really and truly, from his left Red Bull, I don't know, he's just not impressive. And right now, I don't know. I said it the last video, and I'll say it again. I have a feeling that he's on borrowed time. I have a feeling that Lawson is, knocking on the door. And I think Red Bull management would be irresponsible if they weren't seriously looking at Lawson right now. Because I don't think Ricardo is carrying, but he's not carrying his weight. I'm sorry. He's a nice guy. He's probably great for marketing and all of that, which is a big deal for Red Bull, obviously, based on their business model. But he's not producing. At the end of the day, results count. This is racing, and I don't see him as he's not producing the results. Haas, wow. I liked Gunter, but and not to say that all of this improvement is because Gunter has left, because that would be wrong, because obviously whatever the car is now would have been done from last year when Gunter was there. But there's no doubt that the team is a little more structured, a little more serious now, a little more pragmatic, not so emotion-led. And they're producing results. The car is a lot faster in race pace, which was always its weakness. And now we actually see where Haas is a genuine midfield contender. Not bad. That's a pretty big deal compared to where they're coming from. I mean, they're coming from zero. And they're rapidly. I mean, when you look at what they're doing with Alpine and Sauber and the rest of them, I mean, Haas is leaving them behind. That's pretty good, pretty decent, and well driven. The two guys that they have driving for them are solid, and as long as they can get the chassis to work over a longer period than just qualifying, I think we'll see some better results as the year progresses. I'm looking forward to it anyway, because I don't see the guys behind them actually making any meaningful steps. In fact, if not, you're not careful, some of them are going to go backward. So I think Haas prospects are good. Williams. I'm kind of in two minds about Williams. One, I really like Albon. In fact, I'm on record as saying I think he's probably one of the most underrated drivers in the field right now. I think if Albon got a better car, he would be like a Sainz, meaning he's a thinking kind of driver, and I think he would do fantastic in a better car. Having said that, I agree with the decision to take Sargent out of the car, in the sense that I definitely don't think Sargent, if you had to make that choice, then obviously Albon is the better choice. But it's a much bigger concern to me that they don't have a spare car. Vols is this kind of guy who came in with, this guru, and I'm going to change things and all of that. How can you have an away race without a spare car? Without a spare chassis, I should say. That's madness. I mean, I think that's crazy. I think I think it's being covered up a little by their statements about funding. I think that's just a big screw up. I think they roll the dice on not having damage on these away races. It's 3 in a row, I think, or 4. But and hoping that it won't have a big accident. But I don't see that as being good. I think from a sponsorship point of view, that's going to raise some questions. I think it's a really bad judgment call on their part to not have a spare chassis. And we'll see how that plays out. But I think that's a bad judgment call. I know they sent Albon's damaged one back to the factory, back to the UK to be repaired. I'm gonna assume that it's gonna be ready for Japan, but I just think that left a bad taste in my mouth. I'll be honest with you. I have a concern about that. Um, Alpine. I don't know if I can say anything about them because there's nothing to say. They're just nonsense. They're French and they're just doing rubbish. I'm not a fan of Ocon. I'm a bit of a fan of Gasly, but even with Ocon, who I'm not a fan of, him don't deserve this. He's not a bad driver. I think he's a dirty driver, but he's not a bad driver. He's fast, and if he had a better car, he would produce better results. I think Gasly and Ocon by now must be just lost because I think the team is lost. So I don't know what they're doing, and there's not really anything you can say about it. I just think they're nonsense, and I wish Andretti would buy them, or I wish they'd sell to Andretti. Sauber. How many pit screw-ups can you have? I mean, really and truly, how many times are you going to have the same screw-up? The wheel nut situation, race after race. In this event, I think twice the wheel nut fell off and rolled. One at a time, it rolled out into the pit lane. Now, that's a serious violation. I don't even know how they managed to avoid getting a penalty for that, right? The wheel nut is supposed to stay in the rim. Each rim that you carry to the car, each new rim is supposed to come with its own wheel nut attached to the rim. So when you take off the old, the rim you're removing comes off with its nut, and the new one you're putting on has its new nut attached. The fact that the nut is falling off, I think in one case the nut from the old wheel that they were taking off fell off, and in another case the new wheel that they're ready to put on the gun on it, that nut fell off. I don't know what they're doing. That's an FIA mandated standard for all the teams, by the way. That design so as far as I know, it's not like they're having to invent it. They probably have to make it, manufacture it, but the specs are given to them by the FIA. I just don't understand what they're doing. I mean, making a mistake, everybody can make a mistake and have a screw up, but 2-3 races in a row multiple times is insanity. That they need to step back and have a serious rethink, because right now they're embarrassment, and actually, as I said, with the wheel rolling out into the pit lane, a danger. When I say roll out in the pit lane, it actually rolled out into the traveling lane when the cars exit their pit boxes and start to accelerate down the pit lane. And you have a thing like a metal wheel nut rolling out into there. That is insane. That should never, ever, ever, ever occur. So I don't know what they're doing there. Alright, so MB, Mercedes. I'm going to leave. I save Mercedes and to an extent Verstappen for last. So let me touch on Verstappen. Great qualifying. I think he was, I don't want to say lucky, but I think he had to dig quite deep. I think Sainz was on it. Sainz was on it all weekend in practice. He was clearly fast. And in Q1 and Q2, he was on it. It's a measure of Verstappen's talent, I think, and confidence in his abilities and in his car's capabilities that allowed him to pull off that lap, because Sainz was on it. And I don't think the Red Bull was optimal. Verstappen hates cars that understeer. He likes when the back of the car moves and the front turns in sharply. And he was complaining about understeer from earlier in the weekend. So I don't think the car was exactly where he wanted it to be in his comfort zone. And yet he was still able to pull out a 1:15.9 lap in qualifying. Now, for people like me who really get into it, that 1:15.9 is no joke. That's faster than what RB's own simulations there, when they run it through their computer. And their computer is very good, clearly, because it's been right about everything so far. That 1:15.9 is theoretically supposed to have been impossible for the RB to do. and yet Verstappen pulled that out of the hat. And that's without the car being perfect for him. That's impressive. You can love him or hate him, it don't matter. Because I don't hate him, obviously. I admire him, but I don't love him. I mean, I'm not a fan of him as such. But I certainly admire him, and I admire his talents. That boy can drive. Him know how to pedal car in Jamaican parlance, right? That guy can drive, and that's an impressive achievement. That qualifying run. I think he knew at the right away that something was wrong with the brake, and it is what it is. Mechanical failures can happen. I guess they'll do their investigation as to what caused it. We'll see. I hear some talk about Brembo having issues and all that, but because of what happened with Leclerc before, but I'll wait and see. I don't want to jump to conclusions, right? Because it's a machine at the end of the day. You can have mechanical failures of any type. Mercedes. What is Mercedes doing? Mercedes has had how many years now of trying to figure out the ground effects? Mercedes has changed their entire car concept. Mercedes has changed their car designer. And Mercedes is still in a position where when the car is fast, they don't know why. When the car is slow, they don't know why. Because if when it's fast, you know why, you can then replicate that setting so that it keeps being fast. When it's slow and you don't know why, even when you change to try to make it fast, if you don't know why you're changing or what you're changing, it might still be slow too, which is what's happening to them. So they clearly don't know what is going on. They don't know what's making the car fast sometimes, and they don't know what's making the car slow sometimes. Because if you notice, they have these incredible peaks and troughs. When you look at their pace in practice, there are times when they're fast, then it just goes away. They don't know. And they try. Sometimes you get a feeling that they're literally just randomly trying experimental setups because they don't have a clue what will actually work or what won't. So they just randomly throw stuff at it to see in the dark and see if it works. That's madness. That is madness, right? Hamilton, I mean, I'm not talking about the engine failure today. As I said, just like with Verstappen's brake failure or whatever, a mechanical failure can occur with the best team in the world. So that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the lack of pace. Before the engine failure, Hamilton was nowhere. I mean, he ran off the track. He was nowhere in qualifying. He was nowhere in, just going backward, basically. I don't know what they're doing. Now, Russell is making a better hash of it. He's obviously extracting more out of the car than Hamilton currently. But you also get a feeling that he's doing so at the cost of no margin. Now, yes, you're racing and you're at the highest level of racing. You're not saying you're going to believe in a big margin. You're supposed to be pushing the limit of the car all the time, of course. But you get the feeling that Russell is literally on the absolute limit, meaning he's driving the car in such a way that he's essentially taking too much risk. And so when it works, he produces a decent result. But he's on such a razor's edge that the slightest thing, and that's it. And today, again, I'm sorry, I think that was his fault. Yes, Alonso changed his breaking point. Yes, he probably changed his line. Yes, he probably is doing it. And he's doing it deliberately, obviously, to discombobulate Russell, which is fine. I don't see anything wrong with that. That's what defensive driving is all about, right? But remember, Russell's not some new. Russell has been in Formula One now several years. He's had, how much races under his belt now? Dozens and dozens, probably close to 100 races now. What on earth is he doing? Right? That he has this very bad track record of making these huge mistakes, especially late in the race. It's like, I don't know if it's a focus thing or a desperation thing or what. But if you look at most of Russell's big crashes, they happen very late in the race. Either the last lap or near to the last lap. And you look at Singapore, there are other times too, with Bottas one time at Spa. He just does this weird thing where he just crashes in either with other people or by himself late in the race. I don't know. Yes, that's partly him, but it's also perhaps out of desperation because the car is not giving him what he wants. So he has to be driving it at that extreme level. Bad combination. This is a bad race for Mercedes. 2 out. Toto must be like wondering what he's going to try next. As I said, they've changed the car. They've changed the designer. They've changed a lot of things. It's not working. I don't know. Mercedes is in the wilderness right now. Bring on Japan. Let's see what happens.